Well, good morning. So I'm like Jim, you know, and Ryan both. I had a thought about this for the last several weeks of what this presentation was going to look like. And I don't have an extensive PowerPoint. This is my slide. And but hopefully that by the time we're done here, that we'll have a vision of what's important to me as a farmer and as helping with policy generation at the National Association of Conservation Districts. So and my notes have changed. My presentation has actually changed since I've been here. And you know, first of all, Jim had mentioned about, and Ryan both, about local policy. You know, federal soil health policy is not just a Farm Bill policy. It's not just words in a Federal Register. And one thing we have to do as we move forward with our soil health process is understand who it's for. And I think that getting the message out, and this is probably more of a commentary as much as anything, but from my perspective as a farmer, I want to make sure that everybody that I'm affecting with soil health knows why we're doing it. You know, that's not just the farmers in the group, that's not just talking to the 500 and some people that are here, because they're the ones that get it. It's the ones that aren't here that I want to understand, and their families and their kids and their grandkids to understand why soil health is important for the next 10 years, the next 5 years, the next 25 years and on, you know, as a capability of providing a sustainable food source for not only us, but for our families into the future. So with that, and there are a few things that I want as a farmer, and I'm going to go into them, try to build them into my program. So I'm about the average age of a farmer, just maybe a little higher. I don't want to be the average age of a farmer anymore. I want to be older than average. I wanted my son to come into the farming program with me, you know, into the farm, and between the variability with crop insurance payments and yields, especially where I'm at in southern Iowa, we have some of the best ground in the country and the world, and some of the poorest. And to utilize that takes diversity. And my diversity is my cow herd. You know, I'm trying to get something off the acres. I'm trying to make the best use of what I have available. If it's not food, if it's not grain for production to sell to cover my costs, it's feed. And so it gives me some flexibility in managing my risk, for one thing, because I do have that very basic diversity of just the cattle and feeding those calves out. Because if my crop is a little poor, it's probably going to be better feed. You know, it's the relationship, and this year's a good example. We went from Memorial Day, or just the Friday before Memorial Day, until the August 15th with 1.4 inches of rain in my area. And we had tremendous first cutting of hay. Everything looked good to start out with, but trying to do the things that I do as a farmer, which is to promote soil health, is you know, a nutrient, you know, side dressing my nutrients, letting things stay green as long as I can before I plant into them, kind of worked against me this year, because my side dress nitrogen didn't get to the crop because we had no rain to put it to the crop. So I'm looking out here at the brown pasture, and I'm feeding my hay every day from the 1st of July to my cows, and comfortable in the fact that I do have the crop insurance floor, and that's my base, you know, and I'm not what you would call a great risk taker when it comes to spending a lot of money. My newest tractor is a 2002 International, and my average age of my tractors is going on 30 years. So I tend to utilize my cash flow for things that tend to build income rather than cost income, and that's utilizing my equipment that I've built up over the years. But that's given me some flexibility and lower cost. But going back to what happened with the drought, and knowing that I had a base that I was covered with crop insurance for my banker who was comfortable with that, I had planned on harvesting a lot of my corn crop for feed. I'd used up my feed. I'd went through my cover crops, and I am on the edge of overutilizing my farm. I really was this year, because I was running 120 cows and 28 replacement heifers on about 150 acres of pasture. And so that is on the edge, and so there was no reason or no doubt that it was evident that I was going to go through some feed when there's nothing growing. But when I started harvesting my corn for silage, a lot of it was this tall. The tonnage wasn't very great, but what I found out was that the corn yield was good in it. Partly because the nitrogen that didn't get into the plant in June when I wanted it to was actually available when we started getting rain after the 15th of August. And so even though I had a lot of blind stalks and I had a high population in the field of corn, and it hadn't grown very much, there were big ears on it. And so my silage is very high quality, very high energy silage. It won't take very much of that to mix in with the corn stalks and the bean stubble that I'm going to harvest off of my fields when I get home. No, that's just a jest. But I did chop a lot of acres, put them in the harvest store. The corn is very high. It's almost a complete ration, especially using the DDGs. But after paying my crop insurance premium and looking at my yields that I have, when I thought I was sure I was going to have a loss, especially based on past history, I'm actually going to build yield this year. And it's purely reflective on the length that I have been practicing no-till and cover crops. My personal farm, it's been a longer term. Corn that I didn't think was going to have any ears on it was running 200 to 240 bushel. And you could see some of that, that the kernels were there, but I was expecting real small popcorn type stuff. So the late rains, you know, made a lot larger kernels, a lot more yield. Now the poor spots were poor, but not as poor as some ground that I've just taken on that really struggled to have a great yield. You know, so they're still going to beat the crop insurance guarantee, and I'm okay with that. But it made me think: how bad do I need the revenue assurance? Yeah, I probably would have been okay with catastrophic insurance this year, because it would have cost me $50 a county, and I would have had almost the coverage I needed. And I really think that I'm building to that point where I have no need for that. Now, I'm a little bit different than my son would be that was in the program with me, and so. Yeah, as a dad, I want to make sure that safety net is there. I want to make sure that when he's understanding what I'm doing as a farmer that's really unusual in my area, promoting cover crops and having poor looking corn that yields high instead of great looking corn that yields low, that does make a difference. And but he's going to be working away from the farm. We've heard people talk today, and yesterday, that that's their generation. That's how they generate their income, is having to work away from the farm, not only for food on the table, but for insurance and all the things that we have to have that cost so much. So I'm thinking in soil health policy, general farm bill policy, how do we promote getting those young people back? It's not going out and having a farm that's going to be a corn soybean rotation and farm it the way Dad and Granddad and generations before that did it. It's providing some avenue of protection for them, not only for risk management at the bank, but something that will allow them to cover the quality of life that would come from not having to go get a job to pay for insurance. Having that diversity that lets them have a few sows and a few cows and things like that, and build that into the system, but also expect that if we're going to build that into the Farm Bill program, that there's going to be some caveats to that. There's going to be some some expectation that we can help them build soil health into their system, and that would be expected, especially if we're going to help them with some of these other costs. It's going to be important to the general public, to the 325 million Americans out there, that they have a cheap, sustainable food supply. Sustainable being one of the key words in that. And so if we take that sustainability and tag that along with the regenerative discussion that we've been having at this meeting, it gives us an opportunity to chart a course of information. Starting at maybe our grandkids in school, that our grandkids are a little different than most grandkids and kids in school because they've been exposed. They understand the farming way of life. They understand the how food gets on the table. That's a very low percentage anymore. And so we need to factor that into our thoughts of where we're going to move out, not only with this farm bill, but with what this farm bill leads to in the future. So those are 2 or 3 simple things that I have as a farmer and as a dad of wanting to cover while I'm doing this. How do we bring other people along with this? You know, what are the things that make other farmers that aren't adopting cover crops and soil health, what makes them uncomfortable? I've got pictures that I could show you that if someone that was farming we were talking to about using cover crops saw this, they would say, that's not for me. Luckily it's a small area, but you know, there's 2 or 3 things that allow for, there's 2 or 3 things that allow for successful adoption of soil health principles. And the first one probably is how you harvest in the fall. I've heard discussion after discussion, farmers saying, I can't no-till because I have uneven, it won't come up even. I can't make it work. I've got to harvest the residue. I've got to harvest that windrow soybean residue off of there just because it's not even. And what a lot of farmers don't understand, especially when we went from a 13-foot platform to a 40-foot platform, and the spread capabilities of our equipment didn't keep up, that we're spreading fertilizer. We're spreading residue that has an effect on the ground temperature. I think, you know, cover crops as part of that can make that better, but that's standing in the way of no-till being adopted. You know, those little things that can make so much difference, we need to start talking about. We need to start talking about to the general audience of farmers that aren't no-tilling, that are still you know, disc ripping, figure out why they're doing it. A lot of it's habit. They've got the equipment sitting there. A lot of it's maybe the companies that are selling the equipment, they're still building it. Yeah, but they are enhancing the capabilities of technology to do away with it, and I applaud that to them. But we're gonna have to figure out baby steps for some of those producers. The ones that I was talking to a young fellow this morning, and up in central Minnesota, there's some that actually disc rip twice in the fall. And I'm thinking, wow, I haven't done it for years on mine, and to do it twice seems like overkill. But how do we provide an avenue, a baby step for that producer to work towards soil health, and maybe not soil health so much, but first a water quality practice, which is, it might be just seeding some cover crops, some seed with that chisel on the back pass, so that at least he's got some coverage during the winter time to help control the soil movement. I know that a lot of them are out there, they have nothing to do, they don't have cows to take care of, so tillage is their vacation after harvest, and we need to find a baby step for them to take to get them to adopt it, to work from the first step that we had in the 1985 Farm Bill of 30 to 40% residue coverage, that we never did enhance over the last 40 years, 30 years, like we could have. I really think that if even that would have been raised at 1% a year, where would we be with residue coverage? And that's that's similar to what they've done with the car industry. You don't make a big jump. They did the first time, but you don't make a jump from 30 to 90 in one farm bill. We needed to have done it in the past. Second, we've heard the term highly erodible land. What a killer that is. I mean, half of Iowa is non-HEL. They're okay, according to our own terminology. So what we have to talk to them about is why they're not okay, and use it in numbers that aren't really like what you mentioned, Ryan, and I saw that same article, $4.8 billion spent removing nitrates. If that was spent in central Iowa, it would still only be 19 cents a gallon. That doesn't sound like a lot for drinkable water. But it sounds like, I'm telling, and of course the Des Moines Water Works, it was 1.5 million they spent on nitrate removal, which was about 1/100 of a cent per gallon, because they did treat 25 gallons of water for central Iowa to drink, mostly to wash cars and water lawns and stuff like that. But regardless, we need to figure out a way to utilize that message on the big scale and help get support from our families, from our neighbors that don't farm, and figure out a way to get our neighbors that don't farm the way we do to make that first step or that second step. Had a call from my brother this morning, and he's a plower. We used to farm together, and we had a little bit different thought process on how to do it, and he's first in, first out, but he called today and he said, I'm thinking about putting some rye on some ground to go to beans. Should I do it? Well, you know what my answer was? Absolutely. You know, you'll never make that first step or you'll never get to the end game if you don't take the first step. So, and he's got the advantage, he does have a place where he can run cows on it. And that's a win-win. Anybody that's got livestock should be thinking about, you know, the profitability of cover crops maybe first, and then what the soil health benefit is second. But soil health is just a means to an end. You know, our ultimate goal is stopping things like the dead zones. It's being able to go wade in the creek and not worry about algae or swim in the lakes. You know, it's all about water quality first, and profitability is going to be the close second behind that. The ability to continue to produce. And so we're going to work on this for the next few months, trying to figure out what how the federal policy can help us succeed locally, regionally and locally, how we continue to provide conservation benefits through you know, with guidance from the NRCS, through anybody that we can get it, and work ourselves out of a job. I would love to see that point. Never going to see it in my lifetime or my grandkids' lifetime, but the ultimate goal is to have everything fixed. And we've made choices in the past that's going to stand in the way, and we can't go back and take those back. We just can't, because we voted for production. We voted for cheap food decades ago, and we have to still have that production. So we have to fix the choices we've made in the past. We know what they are. We have to continue to work as partners in this, and know that with the help of people that are in this room that understand what the direction needs to be, and with helping us spread the message to those that don't have a clue, I think we can be successful. So with that.